looting, widespread looting, and in many cases, according to local residents, the police either arrived too late or when they did arrive were simply unable to confront the numbers and the apparent level of organization that the rioters are deploying. Widespread criticism from residents, as I said. Politicians are cancelling their summer vacations. Prime Minister David.
Shalom, and welcome to another episode of GMS in Transit, where we prophesy on the road. Today's topic is entitled Riots, Past, Present, and Future. And the reason why I entitled it that is because you had the recent riot out there in England where you had Jake tearing shit up. And you'll see in this video, we're going to show a lot of news clippings of what Jake did. And this is basically just the downfall of this man. I mean, he's catching hell all over the damn place. And that's when we're going to be delivered. Now, I'd like to read to get me Jeremiah 30:7. And then right from there, go to Daniel, the book of Daniel, the 12th chapter, and start from the top.
All right, this is the book of Jeremiah chapter 30, verse 7. Alas, for that day is great, so that none is like it. It is even the time of Jacob's trouble, but he shall be saved out of it. For it shall come to pass in that day, saith the Lord of hosts, that I will break the yoke from off thy neck, and will burst thy bonds, and strangers shall no more serve themselves of him. But they shall serve the Lord their power, and David their king, whom I will raise up unto them. All right, so I'm going to read that again. Just get the other precept real quick. It says, alas, for that day is great.
You remember that precept we read earlier in Genesis about the enemies?
Yep. I'll find it. All right, so it says, alas, for that day is great, so that none is like it. And that day that it's talking about is talking about the day that the Lord comes back to deliver us, you know. But in the midst of the deliverance, what's going to happen is that all the things that Yahushua spoke of that were going to happen are going to happen, because that's what the disciples asked. One of the first things the disciples asked him was, look, Lord, you said all these things are going to happen before you come, but what shall be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world? And then he went and he started breaking it down. He said, you know, nation shall rise up against nation and kingdom against kingdom. There shall be wars, rumors of wars, pestilence. But he said, that's just the beginning of sorrows. But now, the time we're at the very end of the sorrows, when this devil is finally going to go down. So that's why it says, alas, for that day is great, so that none is like it. It is even the time of Jacob's trouble. And Jacob represents the 12 tribes of the nation of Israel. So there's going to come a time before the Lord comes where Jake is going to catch some serious hell, you know. And all these things that have been set up through martial law and all of that is basically set up to destroy Jake, you know, because the main people on the target of the international bankers and these nations is the nation of Israel. They want to destroy Jake completely because they figure if they wipe Jake out, that they'll be able to be in rulership, you know, and be able to get their birthright back. But they're not going to be able to destroy Jake. And if they were wise, which they're not, the scriptures say that the more the ancient Egyptians afflicted Israel, the more they multiplied. So these devils are dumb. So it says, alas, for that day is great, so that none is like it. It is even the time of Jacob's trouble, but he shall be saved out of it. That's why the Lord is going to come to deliver us out of this, out of what's coming. For it shall come to pass in that day, saith the Lord of hosts, that I will break his yoke from off thy neck, which just proves that we're still in captivity and bondage under the so-called white man, because the Lord has to come and take that yoke off of us. That's why you still got to pay taxes. That's why you still, you know, they get you in the courts and make you pay child support, make you pay this bill, make you pay that. Why? Because we're still in captivity under the so-called white man. We're still under his yoke. So he still makes you pay unjustly things that you're not supposed to pay. That's and in the midst of all of that, they put Jake to death. They killed these cops. So that's why a lot of these riots are breaking out, because first part of it is that we're at the end of the world, at the so-called white man's world, and the second part of it is the Most High is stirring Israel up, because it's that time. The Lord said, who shall rouse them up to the prey? So we're at that time now where the Lord is rousing things up. You know, he's causing things to stir up, you know, and just like when you put a pot to boil on the stove, it doesn't boil all at once. You know, it starts slowly, and then you'll see a little bubble here, a little bubble there. Then it'll start boiling, and eventually it starts steaming, you know, and seething, and it boils heavy. So that's what's happening. So it says, for it shall come to pass in that day, saith the Lord of hosts, that I will break his yoke from off thy neck, and will burst thy bonds, and strangers shall no more serve themselves of him, but they shall serve the Lord their power, and David their king, whom I will raise unto them. All right, this is the book of Daniel, chapter 12, verse 1. And at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince, which standeth for the children of thy people. And there shall be a time of trouble, such as never was since there was a nation, even to that same time. And at that time thy people shall be delivered, every one that shall be found written in the book. And many of them that sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt. And they that be wise shall shine as the brightness of the firmament, and they that turn many to righteousness as the stars forever and ever. All right. This is the book of Matthew, chapter 24, verse 20. But pray ye that your flight be not in the winter, neither on the Sabbath day. For then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be. And except those days should be shortened, there should no flesh be saved, but for the elect's sake those days shall be shortened.
Yeah, the days it's talking about is these days right now, the days that we're in right now. Those days be shortened, because one of the plans that the elites have is pursuant to the Georgia Guidestones, is to maintain humanity under 500 million. So they plan to wipe out 6.5 billion people. So the Lord said, except those days be shortened, no flesh shall left to be saved, because that's in the plans of the elites. Okay, all right. Okay, so now we're going to go to the article entitled 10 Worst Riots in American History. It says, it's tough to say what will start a riot. From the entries on this list, it looks like all you need is the right combination of unhappy people, unfortunate circumstances, and anger at society or the system at large that has been allowed to simmer to the boiling point. American history is dotted with these explosions of violence, whether motivated by politics, racism, or just plain discontent. Here are 10 of the worst. Number 1, New York draft riots, July 13th to 16th, 1863. The backdrop: New York stood with the Union when the Civil War broke out in 1861, but the high body count meant the North's soldiers were dwindling. In 1863, Congress passed the United States' first Conscription Act. Though men drafted for service could pay a commutation fee of $300 to get out of service, that financial inequity led to unrest among the lower classes who couldn't afford to avoid the war. The rich men could.
Yeah, and I did the math in my head that in today's system of money, that would be about anywhere from $25,000 to about a little bit more than $30,000. So you got, working class people, if they wanted to get out of the draft, all they had to do was give them the equivalent to today's standard, like I said, $30,000. Now $300 is a lot too, but $300 was a lot back then. But can you imagine some draft officer coming to your door saying, look, you got to fight in this war, you're being drafted, but if you got like $25,000, you don't have to fight. Well, where you gonna get that money from? So the rich was able to not, didn't have to fight in that war because they had the money to pay the government off.
Reading on, it says, the final straw, when the draft lottery began, riots broke out and ran for 3 days. Historians dispute the casualties, estimating that between 120 and 2,000 civilians were killed. The brawls were featured in part of Martin Scorsese's 2002 film, Gangs of New York. Number 2, Newark riots, July 12th to the 17th, 1967. The backdrop, running almost a week in 1967, these New Jersey riots wound up killing 26 people and injuring hundreds more. Black residents of the city had grown tired and angry at repeated incidences of police brutality. Does that sound familiar? Yeah. Does that sound familiar? That's what's going on in your news now. That riot that happened in London was behind police brutality. The guy's name was Mark Duggan, and he was a so-called Negro, probably of the, well, most likely of the tribe of Benjamin, right? Reading on, it says, as well as a growing feeling of being disenfranchised. And that's the same thing going on in England. That they interviewed the youth down there, and they said, look, there's no jobs from the ages of what, 16 to 20, I think it was, or 24 was it, 16 to 24. They said that virtually there's no jobs in England for that age group. And yeah,
and what's happening over here in the States, on the other side of the pond, so to speak? The same thing. You got this recession going on. Barack Obama's not doing anything to quell this jobless situation that we're going through. You're in the midst of 2 or 3 wars. They had kidnapped this high-ranking, I don't know if he was a scientist, but he was a U.S. citizen that had bodyguards and so forth. They pistol whipped the bodyguards and the chauffeur, and they kidnapped this guy. So tension is brewing all around the world, and tension is brewing in the States over here, in America, in the U.S., because they just downgraded your S&P just downgraded your credit rating down from AAA to a AA plus, and now you're being pressured to cut back on a lot of entitlement programs. So like I said in the beginning, there's no jobs out here. Things are very bleak. There's no hope out here, which Barack Obama, that monkey, that's what he ran on. Hope, change, life is going to get better. So riots, yes, we can. So riots are going to take place in America. Just let one cop, a handful of cops, blow away a Jake. They look, everything is seething right now. Everything is ready to explode. And this is also in the scriptures too. And if we have time, we're going to go deep into the scriptures, and we're going to show you that they had uproars, riots, and so forth. This has never changed. This happened back during the time of the Roman Empire.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.